Hello, readers and writers. I am Anthony Manna, otherwise known as Professor Grandpa Tonio, the book guy and the writing guy. And I am here today to read from my latest book, Loukas and the Game of Chance, illustrated with pen and ink illustrations by Donald Babish. This is episode number 6. And I think I better start by giving you a little bit of a background of the story. And this is a piece that I wrote about it. A reimagined Greek folktale, Loukas and the Game of Chance, is the story of a flute-playing boy who befriends a magical, talking, dancing snake. The snake bestows fortune and favor upon Loukas, but some years later, tempted by greed and pride, Loukas loses all his riches and even his family. He now must embark on a treacherous journey filled with suspense and intrigue to find Destiny, her son, the sun, and her daughter, the moon. They will surely allow him to reverse his misfortune, restore his honor, and win back all that he loves and treasures. Won't they? Will they? Won't they? That's what we're trying to find out by the end of the story. Is he saved? In episode number 5, Loukas had come into the enchanted forest and met 3 very strange sisters. Now he's going to resume his journey. After bidding them farewell, he's now going to assume his journey further into the forest in search of Destiny, her son, the sun, and her daughter, Luna, the moon. What I'm going to ask you to think about as we move forward is Loukas is going to meet a massive giant by the name of Kimon. Why is Kimon so sad? And then, further into the forest, Loukas meets 2 talking mountains. What's their problem? So, welcome to episode number 6. And I mean to tell you, I'll remind you at the end as well as right now, that you can find episodes 1 through 5 on my website. And here is the link. And my name is there, Manna, M-A-N-N-A, and media. And that's where you can find the first 5 episodes. So now I'm introducing you to episode number 6, Loukas and the Game of Chance, illustrated by Donald Babish. Loukas pressed onward. From time to time he reached into his satchel and took out his flute. As he moved briskly down the path, he settled on playing a cheerful tune to fight off his fear of Destiny's rejection. One of his favorite songs followed the adventurous journey of a wandering seafarer on his way homeward. Loukas smiled, recalling happy times when Lambros danced to the seafarer's joyful story. Lambros, by the way, is the snake. Whenever Loukas played the song, the snake never failed to sway to the music's changing chords. Will I ever again find the peace and happiness that came into my life when Lambros and I became friends? Loukas thought, sadly. Just as the sun was edging toward the day's zenith, Loukas stopped to rest in a grove of olive trees. No sooner had he settled onto the cool earth than a raggedy giant came barreling down the path and stood over him, snorting. The giant dwarfed Loukas with its huge body. "What brings you to this forsaken place, where even the egret rarely flies?" the giant asked in a thunderous voice. It studied Loukas with large, soulful eyes. Jolted backward from the giant's explosive greeting, Loukas surveyed its hulking appearance. The giant's facial features reminded Loukas of a frog's curious expression. In place of hands and arms, the giant had gangly flippers. Brown algae covered its webbed feet. Topping its head was an untamed mane of green reeds. It wore a threadbare cloak with a patchwork display of underwater plants and creatures. An odor of sulfur hovered over its massive frame. "My friend," replied Loukas, cowering from the giant's sheer bulk, "I'm on my way to Destiny's palace. I will seek the advice of Destiny and her son Ilion, the sun, and her daughter Luna, the moon, to show me the way to mend my broken heart and turn my ruined life around." "You poor man," roared the giant. "No one knows better than me that the mercy you expect from that fickle family is denied far more times than it is given. Look around you." It howled. It grimaced with disgust as it waved a flipper over the parched, cracked riverbed. "Time and time I have begged Destiny for rains to get my river flowing. Again and again I have pleaded for relief from the drought that has dried up this entire valley, but nothing, mourned the giant. "You, though, you're thinking you'll strike a bargain with those cunning soothsayers," the giant bellowed. Well then, if Loukas still believed he could sway Destiny and her son and her daughter to free him from his suffering, he must be on his way into the northern woods. "Sooner or later," the giant said, "you will arrive at the glowing vermilion palace where that troublesome family has lived since long before the beginning of earthly time. Should you meet up with that mischievous mother and her untrustworthy offspring, speak to them about me. Tell them Kimon, the river spirit, lives forever with the hope of bringing his waterway back to life." Drawing himself up to his fullest height, Kimon poured out his prayer of yearning for relief. "That your design, O sacred sages, these currents may you favor to quench with rains, the earth will surely savor. Thus every living thing may once more thrive." A grateful chorus chanting, "Alive, alive, alive." Before taking his leave, Loukas nodded his promise to bring Kimon's case. before destiny, sun and moon. If only he could be sure that one day soon he would find himself speaking his heart and mind to them. At Loukas' farewell, Kimon bent low and handed him a cluster of myrtle leaves. Loukas offered his gratitude with a smile. Watching Loukas wander off, Kimon called to him in a full-throated voice, "May courage be your compass, caution your guide, and good fortune your reward." As Loukas took up his search, he cheered himself on by playing the refrain from the song of the racing dolphins on his flute. The song called to mind the times Lambros followed the tune's quickening rhythm with lively movements. The memory comforted Loukas. With his sandals wearing thin, Loukas slowed his pace. He walked along high roads and low roads, the air fragrant with the scent of sweet-smelling wild mint. Later that day, as sunlight drained away, Loukas climbed a winding path toward a swath of mountains shrouded by a mantle of clouds. At the trail's summit, the ground, silent, quaking, pitched Loukas forward. He fell headlong onto the rocky terrain and crawled along the shaking path until he came to a strand of trees. Once he steadied himself against a tree trunk. He searched for the source of the tremors. When his vision cleared, Loukas drew in a heavy breath. At a stone's throw beyond him, he saw two facing mountains groaning from a clumsy move to reach each other across the path. The second they came within inches of colliding, they backed off a short distance, only to start heaving themselves forward for another face-off. Loukas staggered across the trembling ground, eager to make a mad dash through the narrow opening the mountains left in their retreat. But no, just as he was about to make his escape and avoid being crushed, the mountains yelled to him above the steady rumble of their unstable movement. "What brings you to this dismal place where even the gull rarely flies?" cried the mountain to the left of Loukas. "Your Majesties!" Loukas shouted, cupping his hands over his ears to weaken the harsh grinding. "I am roaming the highway in search of Destiny, her son Ilion, the sun, and her daughter Luna, the moon. It is their wisdom I seek, to show me how to mend my broken heart and turn my ruined life around." "Oh, just as you are desperate to be delivered from your pain," shouted the mountain to Loukas' left. "We long to put an end to the humiliation of this ceaseless heaving forward and backward and forward, again and again and again. We have appealed to the merciless mother time after time, pleading with her and her son and daughter to show us the respect we have earned," yelled the mountain, toiling to approach from Loukas' right. Its scratchy voice rankled with smoldering rage. "Time and time again, we have asked to be released from our hideous confinement and restored to our renowned place within nature," the left mountain moaned. "But nothing. Never does relief come our way." Loukas called out to the pair at the top of his voice, asking for a safe passage, as he might try his luck, winning over Destiny's pity. Like the other tormented souls Loukas had met, Since entering the forest, the mountains told him he would find that family of unpredictable fortune-tellers by traveling northward to their dazzling vermilion palace. Once there, Loukas should remind Destiny's sun and moon that the desperate mountains at Meander Pass yearn to stand serene and majestic once again. Joining together, the mountains rasp the prayer of desire Loukas should recite to the infamous mother, son, and daughter when he stood before them. Would that your plan our dignity may favor, standing firm and noble, admirers of every breed may savor our bountiful valleys, woodlands, and ancient mythical streams, our scented meadows, our craggy cliffs, our mystical fields of dreams. As Loukas prepared to resume his journey, a spray of purple amaranth flowers floated downward within his reach. He put the savory gift in his satchel and waited for the mountains to retreat. As soon as they began to teeter backward, Loukas ran at breakneck speed through the gap they left in their wake. His feet ached from the sandals' growing discomfort. May courage be your compass, called the mountain on the right. May caution be your guide, cried the mountain on the left. And may good fortune be your reward, howled the mountains in unison. Without glancing backward, Loukas hurried on down the path as dusk was settling in. Yet again the night forest slowly came alive with the steady ruckus of yapping, hissing, and hooting. As the moonless night wore on, Loukas took up courage in both hands and played on his flute the ballad of a legendary sailor's return home after months of hardship on the high seas. Yet another song his friend the snake had taken to with great charm. At dawn's first light, Loukas plodded wearily up a steep ridge. A clot of black clouds rolled in from the north on a gust of foul-smelling wind. Coming to the summit, he stopped and cringed at the sight of the blighted countryside below him. Squinting, Loukas gazed upon fields of rotting cypresses looming over groves of grotesquely withered olive trees and the stumps of fallen palms. Skeletons of birds lay strewn about the cracked earth, from which rose a vapor so putrid that Loukas was forced to press his hands over his nose and mouth. He feared this dreaded wasteland might be an omen foretelling Destiny's refusal to help him bring order to his sorrowful life. A dreadful thought crossed his mind. Should I abandon my quest and turn back now and live the rest of my days lonely and grieving my losses? What should Loukas do? What would you tell him to do at this point in his journey? Should he turn back? I'll stop there and pick up again the next time we're together. Thank you so much for being here. It's such a pleasure to read my story to you. And I wanted to show you before we leave the illustration that Donald Babish created for the creatures and the characters he meets. There are the three sisters, and off to the right and left are the mountains, and that's Kimon, the river spirit. Don't forget, you can go to my website and follow this link, and you will come upon the first 5 episodes. Goodbye for now. I'll see you again with episode number 7 soon. Thank you.